This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. We are here in Las Vegas for the annual Consumer Electronics Show. And we have Bob O'Donnell now.
And the annual Glenwood reunion.
Yeah, the Glenwood gang. You gotta be careful saying Southside of Chicago gangs, right?
That's very true.
But this is what, the third year now?
I think so.
We've done this, and for listeners, you know that Bob also is one of the hosts for the TechPinions podcast, also on the network. So if you're not following that, hop on over and check out the TechPinions. Great insight on what's going on in keeping up with what's going on in technology and trends, particularly in Silicon Valley. So you've had the morning to be on the show floor.
Yeah, and all day yesterday doing press conferences and half of Sunday doing stuff as well.
I used to do that when I was doing when I had my regular column on Forbes. I'm like, I don't know how you guys do that stuff.
Well, you got to do part of it because that's when, you're going to get the news stuff. And frankly, these days, of course, luckily I'm getting pre-briefed, so a lot of it is just actually seeing it in person in some cases. But
this brings up a question though, because CES is just so big,
right,
and so noisy. How much really gets announced here? How do you get above the noise level?
It's almost impossible, and so the way you do it is with flashy press conferences, and you do, my first one of the day yesterday was Panasonic, so they bring out Michael Phelps, right? Then they bring out, So then they bring out these Star Wars characters because they work with Walt Disney Imagineering, doing a small portion of a Star Wars show with stormtroopers and BB-8 and a Rebel fighter, that's based off of one of the rides at, in the new Star Wars section.
Right.
You got to do stuff like that, or, you do all kinds of weird things to try and get people's attention. Then on the other hand, you got other companies like Samsung did their keynote where they introduced almost nothing and just talked about these kind of touchy-feely concept sort of things. Mm-hmm. And so people do things, it's very different, and people take very different approaches. It is incredibly hard to get, above the noise, but sometimes there's surprising stuff. Probably the biggest surprise, frankly, was at the Sony press conference yesterday when a car rolls out on stage from Sony. Yeah, exactly. Hey, for listeners out there, too bad it's not visual. Phil's face just said it all. What the heck? But so here's
was it a Sony branded car?
So here's what it is. It's a prototype. They call it S Vision, and what they're really trying to do is highlight the fact that they are actually a major car component supplier for technology, but they actually took it to the level of building an entire platform. It's kind of like, Intel building a concept PC,
right.
Sony building a concept car.
They're not going to manufacture it.
They're not going to manufacture it, and it's creating confusion because some people think perhaps they are. But, here's the thing. For example, in the case of Sony, what it is they make more than 50% of the world's CCD image sensors. The thing, basically your smartphone camera, more than likely has a Sony CCD in it, or several these days, since they all have multiple cameras. And obviously Sony has been known forever for extremely high image quality, and that's critically important for automotive applications for things like for ADAS, assisted driving, and fully autonomous driving. So they are pushing hard in a big way to drive that automotive CMOS sensor business. They're also even going to the point of doing sensor fusion now, which we haven't seen them do. And of course, they've always done infotainment-based technology from their home electronics business. So they took a number of their component technologies and used that as a platform, worked with a whole bunch of other companies. Their list was huge. They had, Bosch and Continental and Qualcomm and BlackBerry and NVIDIA, and that helped them with this prototype S Vision car. But it was a beautiful car too. So that's the crazy thing. Like, this is not just some little chump change pocket deal that they're going to, throw together. It's clearly they spent some time and money and effort on a fully electric car design unique to them,
right,
leveraging a lot of their technology. So it was a powerful way to make a statement, I think, that they are serious about the automotive business. They see automotive as the next platform of the 2020s, right? Platform wars in 2010s were smartphones. Platform wars in 2020, Sony's making the point, and I think it's a pretty good one, are cars. And so I thought that was actually kind of interesting. And the other thing is it kind of reflects this thing about Sony that they're kind of reinventing themselves, right? They have been seen forever as this kind of old school, TV and audio and PlayStation business, not necessarily on the cutting edge of electronics as much anymore. And so I think that was an interesting, thing for them to do. So that's one way that some companies, approach
Well, and
that.
in fact, I was in the Sony booth early this morning, but you'd still heavily
Of course, it is.
TVs
Yes.
and.
Yeah, and 360 reality audio, which is their
360 reality. Well, I saw your paper.
Yes,
Your white paper just came out on the 360 spatial audio.
Yeah, that was a fun project because
because you're into music.
I'm a musician. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Phil and I played in junior high band together. That's a little trivia fact. You can pull out.
I'm going to point
cocktail
this out
parties.
that I was first chair baritone.
You
were second chair trombone.
That was for a brief period of time, a very brief period of time. Bring it on. We'll have a challenge.
And I haven't played in 40 years.
And I still play, so it's not fair. Yeah. But it was fun because it was. So Sony obviously has been doing a lot of audio stuff, and they asked me. They said, "Hey, you understand the technology and the music side of things." And if you look at the history of recorded audio, it was interesting because, of course, it was all about convenience. All the technology was about convenience when we moved to digital audio and digital music because it was MP3s, but because you had slow networks and low storage capacity, you had to compress the music way down, and you lose resolution and you don't get the full impact. So over the years, we've seen them raise the quality. I mean, not just them, lots of other people, but they've been driving, now they've got high-res audio.
Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Yes, he did. He was Pono.
They were all out there, dismissing kind of digital audio.
Yep, absolutely. And then the other thing that's been interesting is, trying to recreate sort of the 3D soundscape. And that's, so the newest technology that they talked about and that I wrote about in that paper was on, they call it 360 reality audio. And
they call it MPEG-H?
It's MPEG-H 3D, I think.
Okay.
And it is, the idea is the concept of binaural recording. And binaural simply means hearing from both ears. The early implementations of binaural recording, they literally would take a styrofoam head and stick microphones where the ears were, and then place that head in the middle of, say, a symphony orchestra or a jazz band playing or whatever, and you would get an absolutely realistic representation because it was recording as if your head was there. So now what they're doing is they've built a set of audio production tools for professional musicians and producers to take individual sounds and position them, just like they do nowadays with soundtracks.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now you can do it with music, and so they built a platform of that, and then they've worked with streaming services, and even have taken it to the point where you can take a photograph of your ear, and then they upload it to the web, and then there'll be use AI to match your ear shape to adjust the what they call the HRTFs, head-related transfer functions, that tweaks the sound personally for your ear shape and size. It's a bit out there, but for audiophiles and people who are really into it, that's.
But is this just for listening to music?
Yes.
Or does this also play into kind of the 6 Degrees of Freedom, AR, VR audio? So if I'm facing one direction, I hear this music.
Yeah.
If I turn around, it's now coming from my back.
It can. That's one of the capabilities they're doing. More what they're trying to do now is just to say, within a stereo set of headphones, because you could theoretically, one of the new Amazon Echo speakers, the high-end one that has all the speakers on it, actually supports this Sony technology, the reality audio. But it's really optimized for headphones.
Right.
And the idea is to give you this, kind of like the old Dolby headphone type effects where you get sound all around you, but specifically optimized for music. And so they're working with a bunch of musicians, and because they own a record label, that kind of helps.
Yep.
To get artists to try this and to let people kind of experience audio, in a interesting, more enveloping way. But yes, theoretically, obviously, when you start to think about what they're going to do with AR and VR in PlayStation, this technology potentially has that application as well.
Perfect. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Bob O'Donnell here at CES. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. Welcome back. So, Bob, one of the things I know you covered, and actually it's how you and I got reconnected after many years after our days of playing Little League Baseball in Glenwood, is you've been a follower of the PC industry forever. In fact, your analysis and projections, as I would remind you when I was at HP, could move share price.
Yeah.
So be careful about how you project the PC sales numbers. But, there's always been this prediction that, PCs are dead, they're going to go away. What is it you're seeing now?
Well, it's ironic. I just wrote a column that's on the TechPinion site and a couple other sites that pick it up, saying, and the headline was, it's 2020 and the PC market is alive and kicking, which... If somebody had said that would be a headline 5 years ago, everybody think you're crazy.
Right.
But, look, the PC market has not ever reached its heights that it hit in around 2011, I think, or so, or 2012. It hit 365 million, something along those lines.
I knew how to pick my retirement.
Yeah, exactly.
2011.
But, what's fascinating is... there was a ton of buzz and excitement. We were talking about, the CES show and these press conferences. There was as much buzz and excitement at an AMD press conference in 2020 as there was on anybody else's press conference. What does that say about the world that we're in?
Right.
It says a lot about Intel versus AMD, which is in itself an interesting discussion. Intel also had good showing at theirs. But what it says is that these guys are building technology that's relevant because PCs have proven to be relevant even in the age of smartphones because there's the tactile experience you get of working with a physical keyboard, the larger screen, and the capabilities that you get from a PC are still incredibly important. And what's interesting is, I would argue, we saw some of the biggest innovations we've seen in some time. So AMD came out with their Ryzen 4000 series, which is the last piece of the puzzle they really needed, which was the new mobile parts based on what they call their Zen 2 core. So this Zen core that they designed, Zen 2 in particular, they first came out with the desktop parts, and last year they overtook Intel on the performance side for the first time in 20 years.
Yep.
And now they took that same core and they finally moved it to mobile. And now they're kicking, obviously they've just announced it and it was their own preliminary specs, so take it with a certain grain of salt, but the benchmarks they showed were pretty damn impressive. So that's interesting. At the same time, Intel just debuted Tiger Lake, which is their next generation stuff coming later this year, as well as their their discrete graphics core. So you've got, and oh, by the way, all these guys are talking about doing AI now within the PC. So, and then you toss in a little 5G just to complete the buzzword bingo, and you actually have PCs now leveraging the most important technologies that the entire tech industry is following. 5G, AI, foldable displays, sustainable manufacturing. That's what the PC vendors are talking about in 2020, and that's part of the reason why I think we're in a real renaissance of the PC market, ironically, even though here we are in this new decade.
Yeah, it is interesting, Greg, because everybody's been predicting the death of PCs, forever. And AMD is like on fire.
They're crushing it. And they
and then you throw in what NVIDIA's doing.
Absolutely.
You throw in.
And then Qualcomm is getting serious about, I mean, you know, at the Qualcomm press conference, it was hardly anything about phones. It was all about PCs and automotive. You know, this is Qualcomm. Like, even they're like, we are serious about the PC business. And Cristiano Amon, their president, said, look, our big news at this press conference is about PCs. You know, and they have the world's first 5G PC is going to come from Lenovo. It's using the Qualcomm ARM-based HCX chip, as well as a Qualcomm 5G modem. Then you had, in addition to that, you had both HP, Dell, and Lenovo on some of their other systems talking about integrated 5G on their forthcoming PCs. So, yeah, it is. It's true. And then, little back to your AMD comment. I have to say, probably the cleverest data demonstration I saw. AMD did this benchmark where they showed the original Threadripper, which is their 32 core or 16 core chip, and then did a 32 core version, and they compared it on a vertical bar, and they showed its performance against Intel. Then they showed the next generation. It went on to the second screen, and then they announced their sort of one more thing. Final announcement was a 64 core, 128 thread CPU, the 3990, which also costs $3,990, so clearly not for everybody. But it went all the way across 3 screens on their whole, just to show what the level of performance they're achieving this thing. And the benchmark comparison they did was to 2 high-end Intel Xeon, their highest-end server parts, which collectively are $20,000. And they showed the performance of that versus this single Threadripper at $4,000. Now, look, how many people actually need that? Unless you're editing 8K video, and there's like 100 people in the world who do that, you probably don't need it. But for the people who are looking for that kind of ultimate power, now it's there.
Yeah, wow.
It's crazy.
That is crazy. That is crazy.
It is crazy.
I know you got your crazy schedule today, our crazy schedule today, so I want to make sure we get you out of here on time. Where can people follow you if they want to keep track of what you're up to? And
a couple of things. So I recently started a Forbes column, as a matter of fact.
Yep.
That's specifically focused on 5G. And, 5G is this incredibly confusing topic. So Forbes just started a brand new 5G section, and they invited me to be one of the main contributors to that section. So if you go to Forbes.com/5G, you'll find my stuff there.
Right.
Of course, I write at TechPinions.com.
Mm-hmm.
I have the TechPinions podcast that I do with some of the other TechPinions folks, Carolina Milanese and Tim Beharin, our good friend as well, his son Ben, who also joins the podcast. I write for USA Today, so you can find my stuff there. And then finally, if you really want to dig in, my website is TECHnalysis Research. That's TECHNALYSIS, no A in the middle, not tech analysis, just TECHnalysisresearch.com.
Great. And we'll have all the links for that up on the website. And so in the closing minutes, what's the one thing here at CES that's got you most excited? And you're limited to 1 minute.
I got 1 minute. It's interesting. I'm really torn on the whole 5G thing. Right now, it's being ridiculously overhyped. All the things about, autonomous driving and robotic surgery over 5G are complete and utter BS and aren't going to happen for years, if ever. But it is getting people to get excited about rethinking how we think about wireless connectivity and even starting to potentially battle Wi-Fi in private networks for businesses. It's not the sexiest topic, but it's interesting because you combine that with AI and edge computing. That's the future.
Perfect. Bob, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Phil.
See you soon. So welcome back to the second half of the show here. We are in Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show. Here, as part of what we do at the show, is also trying to find interesting companies doing things that are kind of the non-obvious innovations. Here, it's typically all about electric cars, artificial intelligence, a mobile phones, laptops, processors. But here at CES, you will see literally just about anything and everything under the sun. In fact, I was walking the floor this morning and I came across 1970s version of boom boxes, a company that just makes the old big boom boxes. I'm like, at CES, you'll see everything. So for the second half of the show, we've invited a guest here, Greg Johnston from Manta 5. You've got kind of an interesting... Well, first of all, thank you for taking the time to join the show today.
Thanks, Bill.
All the way from New Zealand. Now, you're not in Auckland, though.
Just south of Auckland.
Just south of Auckland.
Okay. A place called Hamilton, so it's about an hour and a half south of Auckland.
Right, so if you're a listener to the show, you know that we have a relationship with Callahan Group in New Zealand. I go there to teach workshops. I get to teach in the lovely the metal shop at the train museum in Auckland. Cool. I did it right after a typhoon came through. So it's taught an 8-hour workshop yelling over the rain, pounding on the metal roof. But, so I got to go through a typhoon in New Zealand.
Nice.
But you made the trip here. Introduce yourself and you just give us a quick introduction to Manta 5.
Cool. Yeah, so Manta 5 is the brainchild of our founder, Guy Howard Willis, who's an avid cyclist. And he had a dream, literally, of pushing off from his pontoon in his holiday home in New Zealand and cycling on water. And the dream was so profound, he woke up and he was like, well, how could I replicate the cycling experience that I love on land, but now on water? And so it's taken 7 years, but we've developed the world's first hydrofoil bike on water.
Now, I've seen some of the YouTube videos, so it's kind of this bouncing, it's almost like a wave runner kind of thing, right? It's got like a fin on the front, fin on the back kind of a model, and you're kind of...
So effectively, above the water is an electric bike. So as you're pedaling, it's assisting you.
Right.
And below the water is a hydrofoil plane. So you got two wings, very much like an aeroplane, and a propeller. And as you're pedaling, that propeller's spinning, and that's giving you the thrust, and obviously then you've got lift. So it's literally planing on the surface of the water. And the whole idea was to replicate cycling experience. So you've got the handlebars, the seat, and the pedals very much like a bike. And as you're pedaling, you're literally planing up.
Okay, now here's the question, right? Because we see this all the time with innovators, right? They've got it up in the head. Translating it into a real product, though, right? So I can only imagine what some of the first prototype versions, look like. It's like the proverbial kid who wants to fly, straps on the cardboard wings, jumps off the barn, crashes into the hay. What was the first, what was his experience in trying to help do that translation?
Yeah, so Guy, our founder, found someone who was crazy enough to give it a try and start innovating. So he's a design engineer called Roland Alonso. And they had no real, other things to go off. And so they started with hacking up a bike frame, chucking on some hydrofoils and connecting them to the frame. And they started with a propeller that ended up snapping in the first couple of spins. And so then they took the propeller off. And we had a private pool, and we had two people running down the side of the pool with the rope connected to a pulley at the end of the pool. And we're literally just trying to drag this person through the water to develop the hydrofoils and put them in the right place relative to the rider. And that took a number of attempts and obviously heaps of different prototypes. And then once we'd nailed the sort of rider position relative to the foils and the right size foils, it was then about innovating around the propeller. So you talk about Callahan. Callahan actually gave us a grant fund from the New Zealand government to be able to actually work with an aeronautic engineer to develop the propeller and foils in combination.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So you actually got a Callahan grant.
That's right.
See, it all comes full circle.
It
all comes full circle. So what was that time frame from the time of, I get the light bulb going off until you, what I would classify, have like a real working prototype to actually start showing people? How long did that take?
So for the first 2.5 years, it was just really trying to get the proof of concept.
A lot of running around pools.
A lot of it. So actually, Guy didn't want to be distracted or told no. So he actually kept it secret. It was just him, his wife, Roland, our chief designer, and Roland's wife. Those are the only people who knew about it for 2.5 years. And then once they actually got proof of concept, then Guy told his son and told other investors around. We got a number of investors on board to be able to take it through. So it's actually been a full 7-year R&D process to go from first idea through to a product that you can actually sell commercially.
So how long has it been on the market now then?
So we've been in pre-sales for about a year now.
Okay.
And we just delivered our first pilot production to New Zealand customers for Christmas. For our
Oh, wow. So it is new.
Very new.
Like, don't be careful. The paint's still wet.
Yeah. Yeah, so we delivered to New Zealand.
How many did you sell?
We limited the first production to 40 40 customers.
Were they manufactured in New Zealand, or did you go offshore? Or?
Yeah, so some of the parts are made in New Zealand. The majority of parts are made in Taiwan.
Okay.
Taiwan's kind of the mecca of cycling. So, Merida and Giant and all those guys.
Well, I'm former CTO for HP. Laptops, you got to go to Taiwan for the ODMs. You outsource design manufacturing guys.
That's it. So they're the best in the world at making frames and making bike parts and those types of things. And we also partnered with a motor company, and we've customized the world's first waterproof electric bike in Taiwan. So
I guess that would be kind of important. You
fairly
get batteries and electricity, and you're on water.
That's it.
Yeah, it would be kind of important to make sure it's waterproof.
That's right. Yeah. So we've actually customized our own housing for the battery, because we wanted to make it exactly like an e-bike, so you can take the battery out, charge it, and there's no sort of hassle for the customers.
Right.
And so we've actually got an IP68 housing.
Oh, wow.
And then a whole bunch of technology in the battery, and we even had to customize the battery connector. So it's everything's custom. Unlike a bike, where most bike companies may make a frame, they go to a bike show and they get all the other parts.
Right, gearing and braking and all that's all standard.
Everything about our bike is custom except for the handlebars, the seat, and the pedals. It's all our own parts.
Well, and it's also interesting from the standpoint that you shipped them so they have them for Christmas. Now, given where New Zealand's located, Christmas in New Zealand's actually warm versus cold in the northern hemisphere, which means everybody was running out Christmas morning, throwing it into the pool or out into the water to try it out.
That's right.
What was the feedback from the people who were the first 40 that got one?
Yeah, so some of these guys have been waiting some time, because they're like the really super innovative early adopters, right? And so they were just fizzing on the opportunity to be able to ride for Christmas. And our whole team were like, hustling late nights and everything, like flying stuff to be able to get it here in time, just so we could get it for them for Christmas.
A lot of air freight.
Yeah.
well, I should qualify. Most everything going to New Zealand is air freight.
Yeah, it takes a while to get stuff to New Zealand. But no, the feedback's been overwhelming. Like, they're really enjoying it. We created like a whole unboxing experience, so we could deliver direct to a customer. Mm-hmm. They can actually unbox it themselves, put the last few parts on, charge the battery up. They're ready to go. So we've had people from all over New Zealand have a go, right from Waiheke Island, which is sort of like a really cool island in the North Island, right down to Queenstown in the South Island.
So I can see everybody out Christmas morning.
That's it.
In the water.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see people like in the United States and Chicago trying it out in the wintertime. You have to break ice in order to try it out. So right now it's only available in New Zealand, right?
Well, no. So we're actually online at manta5.com.
Okay.
And we're selling pre-sales into the US, the UK, and Europe. And so people put down a 10% deposit, and that secures their place in the production queue. And then we deliver for the US starting ready for summer. So we're already sold out of our first production. So we'll be looking at about June, July for delivery for the US.
And how many's in that pre-production? Same kind of 40 or?
No, we're scaling up quite quickly from mass production. So we'll deliver from Taiwan. So we've actually sold a couple of hundred of those for those early adopters, and then we scale up production.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got tens of thousands of people on our database. And I mean, since having one video go viral, we got about 350 million views on Facebook on one video.
Yeah, I think that's the video I saw.
Yeah.
Everybody, that's kind of like, so when Andrew, who does all the guest scheduling, reached out and said, "Hey, you got to have these guys on the show," and I was like, and I've read the description, I think I've seen this video, like everybody else. 350 million other people have all seen the video.
That's it. So we went from like this private R&D company with no understanding of the real commercial success that we could have here to just global, on Forbes top 12 super yacht toys, on Red Bull, on all this. So it's just been phenomenal.
Well, we'll talk about that in the next segment, because I want to talk a little bit about what that experience is, because many of our listeners are at the early idea stage, not quite knowing what to expect as they go through this commercialization. So when we come back from this commercial break, we'll continue our conversation around the Manto 5 and the product and what that experience was making a commercial. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. We were talking at the segment at the break here about that experience in not knowing what you were getting into when you started this whole thing, and then all of a sudden you get the whole press, the viral video, the whole thing kind of blows up with all this interest and inquiries and dealing with now taking a prototype, going prototype to commercialization or commercial product you can ship in volume. Not the same thing. It's people I think underestimate how at HP we had to ship 40 million laptops a year. So
yeah,
when you're dealing with those kinds of volumes and get them on retail shelves in 150 countries, it's a challenge. So talk a little bit about what was that learning process for the organization.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're absolutely right. Producing that one prototype is challenging because you got to try and get the user experience. We're always focused on like trying to replicate that cycling experience and trying to make it as easy as possible for customers to come out of the water. But then going through the whole design for manufacture to be able to actually produce it at scale and to get quality product off the production line has been a major challenge. So we went, we've grown the design team. We've got a whole production engineering team now just to be able to go through that process. We're working really closely with our suppliers to be able to understand their whole production techniques so that we can make sure that they can scale their production. We're really lucky. We've got some really good relationships in the bicycle industry in Taiwan from our founders who are the largest outdoor retailer in the country in New Zealand. So we've leveraged those relationships to get into larger manufacturers so that when we do get it right and when we are in mass production, they can scale with us.
Right.
But yeah, it's been overwhelming. I mean, one of our board members jokingly said, I said, what if we get too much demand? And he said, well, find me that problem. And now we have that problem. And now the cart is ahead of the horse. And so now it's a really interesting dynamic.
Well, and part of the challenge is when you go from a prototype to try to build that first batch, like you called, limited production, doing the first 40 that you shipped here at Christmas, right? In some cases, it's hard to get the manufacturer's attention. You look too small. They're not quite convinced that your product's going to be the big win. Right? Tooling costs can be really expensive.
Horrendous.
You're paying for molds that may get thrown away, all the challenges you have. How did you get the attention of some of these manufacturers even? I mean, obviously, because your founders have this relationship. Was it just that? Or how did you get those guys convinced to ride with us on this thing? This thing is going to be really big. Help us get the first 40 out the door.
Yeah, no, great question. We worked with an agent in Taiwan who's worked with our founders for a number of years.
Right, so that's an important piece.
Yes.
Finding an agent who's got those kind of personal relationships.
Yes.
Who can be your advocate.
That's it. And fundamentally, you have to be there. You have to be in country. Building relationships are everything. If they like you as a person and they like the vision of the company and they think that these people can pull this off, that's so big. So I've spent a lot of time in Taiwan. Traveling a little bit through China as well, just to try and actually build the relationship and share the vision of where we're going and share some of the strategy as well, because, they're like, yeah, that's a cool product, but do you guys actually understand how you're going to get it to market? I think we're a little bit lucky in the sense that the bicycle industry is a very mature industry and it's getting, especially in China and Taiwan, they're struggling with tariffs into the US,
right?
Anti-dumping into Europe. And so they see us as an opportunity to diversify their portfolio as well. So it's kind of a bit of good timing, good relationships that we're able.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I think, a lot of people overlook the agent. They think they want to go straight to the ODM or straight to the manufacturer. And that doesn't work in Taiwan.
That's
It is those relationships. You have to be there for whether you're doing Foxconn or on the electronic side, it's Foxconn, Compal, and the players. You got to have those relationships. So you're just not going to. They're not going to give you the time of day.
That's right. And I mean, I've had about 100, LinkedIn requests from PCB suppliers all over the world. And how are you going to validate that you're working with someone with quality?
Right, exactly. Who's good, who's not good.
That's right.
And you pick a wrong partner, you could blow a year or 2 years in your cycle, burn through your money, and all of a sudden then you got nothing at the end.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah. That's always the biggest fear, right?
Yep.
How do you make sure that you can you can survive? So what's next? Okay, you're ramping up production in the U.S. You're selling into Europe also, right? So what's next?
Yeah, so I mean, our vision at Manta 5 is to become cycling's new frontier. And we really want to create a whole suite of products. You think of mountain biking, and there's a whole range of different mountain bikes. You want to go downhill or enduro, or you want to go cross country. And so for us, we want to cultivate a community around the first product and get people loving it. And then the second part is around creating new products that have different user experiences. So the first one that we want to create is like the next version of XC1, so XC2. And then we want to look towards, the racing version.
Oh, wow.
Because we want to cultivate a sport around our product. And then also, we want to create a surf version as well. That'd be pretty cool. So we've tried to surf waves and stuff on it, and it gets up in planing and stuff. But I think curating a custom version for surfing would be pretty rad.
So here's the question, though, that you obviously, when you do something new like this, then right on your heels are going to come all the copycats.
That's right.
Right? And you're probably already seeing some of them already, right? Particularly when you do the viral video like that, people are like, we're going to hop on that. How do you plan for that? Or do you just out-execute? Or what is your strategy to deal with the copycats?
Yeah. I mean, we have a suite of IP. We've got patents and design registrations and trademarks. But, I mean, you see yourself rolling your eyes. You know exactly that innovation and execution is everything.
I had 38,000 patents at HP.
There you go.
The only value you have is if you're willing to sue.
That's right.
And that's so darn expensive to support and litigate.
So for us, it's really important that we deliver quality to our first customers, that we establish ourselves as Manta 5 as the leader in hydrofoil bikes.
Right.
We've got trademarks around hydrofoiler, so people can't use that term, but hydrofoil biking, we hope, in the future there will be other brands, and we support that because, we want to cultivate a sport. Right. We want to be the leaders in innovating. So
perfect. Real quick, if people want to track what's going on with Manta 5, what's the best place for them to keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, so we're on online at manta5.com. All of the information and the Learn to Ride series is there. We're on Facebook and Twitter and all the normal channels as well.
Great. So Greg, thanks for taking the time out. I know it's a busy show for you. Great product, great story. Really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us here at Killer Innovations.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
So this will wrap up this week's show. We will have a great show next week. You're not going to want to miss it. Check it out. Also, hop on over to killerinnovations.com. We'll have all the links to Manta 5 and what they're doing, so you can, if you want to order yours for the upcoming batches, get on it quick because they're going fast. And with that, we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.